Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome to the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman. There we go. And Carissa, how you doing? I hope you had a good weekend. Whoa, I'm sorry. Actually, let's start over again. Mute switch, that's my fault. Carissa, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So how was your weekend? There we go. Let's try that again. We're good.
Yeah, not bad. I did some more housework. I was, watching the VMAs last night before last? So I kind of checked that out a little bit.
No one told me that they were on.
Yeah, they were on. But what was interesting was you and I were talking about a few days, maybe a couple weeks ago, masks that had, different things like, it would
the LEDs and stuff.
Your voice moves, all your voice waves and stuff like that. But she was performing last night and she had one of those.
By she, cool. I just Lady Googled Gaga. It real quick. Lady Gaga. Yep.
But it was super cool.
Yeah, they're cool, right? I hope that more people get into it as we all wear a mask. But there you go. So everyone, welcome into the Computer America Show. Today on the program, second part of the show, we will have computer and technology news. That's where we cover everything from new products, new services, just anything new in the technology world. We'll be sure to try to bring you all the latest stuff, and you can find it here later on in the program. But in the first part of the show, we have a guest. And as we want to do, today's guest is a company called AiSERA, and we're really looking forward to that. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But before we do, everyone, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including a link to our guest show notes. So, so if you can't remember AiSERA.com, AiSERA, AiSERA. If you can't remember that, just go to Computer America. We'll have a link right there up on the homepage. Very easy to find. And just remember Computer America. While you're there, find out all about our recent articles, product reviews, podcasts, social media links, all that and more at Computer America. That is the best place to find anything that we do right there. So, I think with that being said, Carissa, as always, I'll give you a chance. Anything else you want to announce before we get going?
No, I think we're ready.
All right, perfect. And by the way, your microphone's sounding perfect. So I don't know what you did, but perfect. Love that. Everyone, let's go ahead and bring on our guest. And as I said before, AiSERA, and again, I apologize if it's AiSERA or AiSERA. It is, I already spelled it out, but we have the CEO of the company on. We have Mr. Muddu Sudhakar here with us to tell us all about the company, AI, and more. It's a very fascinating topic, and I'm looking forward to it. Muddu, welcome on to Computer America. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Ben and Carissa. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. And thank you so much. So let's, I think a good place to start would be a little bit of background. When was AiSERA started? And also, what is your background? Have you always been in, kind of emerging technology, or what is your background?
Good. Hey, thanks again. So I think my background is I've been doing both startups and working at big companies for the last 20 years. Most recently, I was at ServiceNow before I started AiSERA. This is my fifth startup.
You're addicted.
Well, good or not, as it's always a team thing, right? So you do it as a team. You try to swim, try to make an impact. So before that, I was at Splunk. Before that, VMware. So I've been doing both, working at big companies and startups for a while. Um, what is AiSERA about? AiSERA is trying to disrupt the customer service and support, right? All of us knows in your Computer America show, this is the most important thing is what new products. I think new age of the products in customer service support is how do you use AI, like how you use Alexa today at home. Can we use Alexa kind of a device and a software to answer all your customer support questions, whether that is related to your antivirus accounts that you have at McAfee, or whether that is related to your Office 365, your Adobe software, your Salesforce, whatever customer support problems you have. What AiSERA is trying to do is provide a service both through voice, through email, through chat, so that you can handle those questions as a self-service to the users, right? Particularly in pandemic right now, with everybody working from remote, you don't want to call in certain 8 to 5, talk to a human being, right? That's too tough. You are at home, you're trying to help your kids, you're trying to do your work in the nighttime. So that's what AiSERA does.
Yeah, it's, sorry about that, getting a little bit of feedback, but I just want to, sorry for interrupting you, but I wanted to ask you about disrupting the customer service, kind of industry and the way that people do it. A lot of people that I know they don't want to talk to robots, and they don't want to do phone trees and things like that, because they'd rather just immediately skip to a human. And here you are trying to drive everyone into automated AI, kind of self-service kind of deal. Do you think that people don't like robots nowadays because they're just not good, or do you think humans have something that that AI can't serve? What is a major improvement that you see coming that will, I guess, solve that thing, where people want to talk to people, but does it always have to be that way, or do you have something to solve that?
Yeah, no, actually, look, the change that I'm seeing is following. First of all, I think what people want to do is get their job done, right? If you give them a robotic experience, or if you don't give it a very natural way to solve the problem, they really don't care if they talk to a machine or an algorithm, right? When you call for a taxi, you're really not calling a company, right? You're using Uber these days as a software, Uber or Lyft. Same thing when you want to order food at home, you're using your Grubhub or Uber Eats. You're really not talking to a person. So people have already got over that. I think even in customer support, if you can provide an experience like Alexa, like Uber, right, and or like Grubhub, I think people will like it. Now, what's the innovation that we bring is we bring something called unsupervised natural language processing. AI is at a point where if I can understand, Ben, what you want as a question, what is Carissa is asking as a question, if I interpret your question and provide the answer, you'll enjoy the experience, right? So that's what we're trying to do is that change is so disruptive. It's like almost like creating a autonomous car, right? So today the cars are going to be driverless. Your financial trading is algorithm trading is driverless. Are you telling me that the robotic experience through customer support is so bad that people want to talk to a human being? I don't think so. I think the technology is out there. Nobody has really focused on delivering a good experience solution. And that's what AiSERA is trying to offer.
I gotcha. And no, that is a very important, kind of subject, because obviously as more people offer services remotely, especially in today's climate, hey, this is going to become, kind of the norm. And we've seen a couple of different approaches and some new technologies. And, we don't have to get into this, but I just got to say that we had IBM research on a couple of months ago, and they were working on an artificial intelligence that could actually discern people's emotions as they go through this process. So they could tell if someone was like getting agitated or such. AI is coming along really, really quickly, I would say.
It is. And again, so in our case, what we do is in old days it used to be called sentiment and emotion, like now I actually understand the meaning of what you're asking as a question. So when you ask a question, we call it an intent. What's the intent Ben has or what Carissa has? And your intent could be different because people are different cultures, different backgrounds, different regions. Your vocabulary could be different. Your English could be different from my English. So I think it turns out that algorithms are better than humans in terms of support, right? Otherwise, you have to keep repeating the same. Even though you get a live agent, you keep getting transferred from one agent to the other agent. They want you to repeat your question. They want to ask the same repeated information, right? I think many of these things will be handled better if you can create a good self-service solution. And this area is actually called conversational AI. So it's specifically with this area where trying to converse with you. Like in the next time, you know what? I won't be on live show with you. You should have a fake avatar of me. Then you could have a conversation. You can't tell it's a human being or this.
Luckily we have the real you here, and but I will say that, hey, if one day we can get a fake version of you that does everything the same, then hey, we'll have you on every single day. But let's go ahead and get to some of these questions here. And so AI, I think that people first started to hear this topic, kind of commonplace about 4 or 5 years ago. Before that, you had machine learning, which was something similar. You had a couple, and of course, I think everyone in sci-fi knows about artificial intelligence, but from like a thriller movie kind of standpoint. When we talk about AI today, especially in the workplace and business and whatnot, how good has AI really become, and how integral is it?
Yeah, look, I'll talk about our own customers, right? So, look, AiSERA is now close to 3 years old. When we started this back in 2017, late 2017, and what I'm noticing with our customers, and some of our customers are like the likes of Autodesk, McAfee. Then you have companies like Dave.com. It's like a millennium banking company, right? And when I look at all these companies, how they're using it are 8x8. So many of these customers, how they're using our solution is to solve customer immediate requests, right? Some people will have a complex request or a simple request. And we are able to get close to 60% of requests are handled through us without going to a human being in many of these places. And that is in 3 years already we are there, right? So, and on day one itself, so it's not like it took 3 years to get there. Most customers, if you have a good solution, you get north of 50, 60% on day one or day 30 or whatever. Deploy that in a few weeks and you get that solution. Now, if you keep evolving it, looking at your algorithms and looking at your data, the data is key to this. It's more than algorithm. The more good data that you have within your customer historical cases, tickets, and knowledge base, my prediction is that this solution will reach north of 70, 80% in the next 12 months to get there. That's a lot. And if this journey continues, you'd probably do 80, 90% of these requests will be handled by algorithms. Only 10 to 15% will go to, as an exception, it'll go to human being.
What does that mean for, I guess, kind of the individual? And thinking about this, a lot of customer support would be handled, kind of seemingly automatically. A lot of people's issues would be handled almost automatically. I mean, what does this mean for kind of the end user, the consumer, who are the customers of all these companies that will be using a product like yours?
Yeah, so I think, look, from a consumer perspective, right, when I look at it, they like it because today what happens is if you go to any sites, whether it's a product sites or hardware sites or any product that you buy, if you have an issue, you have to go through certain support, you have to email them, you have to call them with certain things. So if you can provide a self-service to them, it's how-to videos like your YouTube. Like if I want to understand anything, there's enough knowledge out there. You just want to provide the right knowledge. What I don't want is a Google-like search where I'm searching and trying to see which knowledge. If I do a search on Bencho, I get like 100 links, 1,000 links. I don't know which one, where to find you and Carissa. Instead, if there is a service which is sitting there, hey, Computer Amica, if you have a question, you want to get on the show, talk to it. It'll give you exact steps on what needs to do, right? That's what people are looking. People are looking for a dialogue. People want an Instagram. They want a Twitter. They want a WhatsApp type solution where I type a question, you're dialoguing with me, right? So the consumers want that. There's a much demand for that type of solution across all the products.
So, and this may be a good way to kind of take it to the next step. Where do you see AI going in 5 years? Are we talking about the nth degree where, kind of everyone or like almost every service has an AI that at this point you're just talking with companies? Or you're talking to a singular AI that will be able to answer anything for you? You said not like a Google search, but, do you think maybe in 5 years we'll all be, pulling up AiSERA on our phones and getting solutions to, everything from multiple companies? How do you see this in 5 years?
Very good question. I think if you look back again, how it started is everything started in the beginning with your machine learning and AI, and now it's going to deep learning. So then we went to unsupervised natural language processing, NLP, NLU. So those are all technology. There's a technology growth curve is happening. Now, where I see this curve is going to happen is from a product perspective. I think every product and like every website, every e-commerce, or every device, like you have a Siri and Alexa, will come with various interfaces. Some will be voice interfaces. where you talk to the device and it will go look for the information. Some will be email, where you send an email and you don't have a human being replying back. You'll have a AI services which actually auto respond to your emails for most of those requests. Similarly, if you have a request that's coming through a interface like a Slack or Microsoft Teams or Zoom, like you're on Zoom, Zoom chat will be a great interface. So I'm predicting that Zoom has already hundreds of millions of users. People will use Zoom not only video communication, they can ask a question. On the other end, if we have a nice dialogue system that can answer all your questions, like as you are talking right now, if somebody is on the show can ask a question to this, the system should provide the most common questions. Something that system cannot, it'll come to you, Ben, or Carissa, or other people.
No, and that's a huge point. And by the way that you were put in touch with us here at Computer America was from an article that was published a little bit ago, and it had statements from Facebook's AI chief. And this is, I think, where AI gets really interesting, because AI, again, it's not just one AI. It's not just one. It's not just one algorithm. This is something that I think there will be hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of different programs, and every one of them is going to be a little bit different, and even how they're trained is actually, as I understand it, a pretty tightly kept secret, because that is your secret sauce, that is your proprietary formula and how you train these things. Now, again, you were put in touch with us because Facebook's AI chief recently had a quote, and I want you to respond to this. And the quote was, "Algorithms require much more data and time to learn much narrower lessons. A handful of scientists are pushing the furthest limits of artificial intelligence by training it to better learn by itself, more like a baby. This is the single most important problem to solve in AI," which again seems to be, instead of, like I was saying, that secret sauce that, all these different AI formulas, you feed information to it and you feed a lot of information into it. They want, I guess, algorithms to go out and just kind of collect their own data and teach themselves. What do you think about that?
No, I think there are two schools of thought, right? So look, there's as you saw in the industry, there's everybody has different thoughts, and industry is going to play out on its own. I think there's a general thought about, I want a universal AI, like an AI God, where I want an oracle where it can answer anything. I think that's where I think the Facebook AI chief is referring to, like algorithms for a more generic. I think what the market is going to do is, first is, as you were saying earlier, it'll be much more directed towards a vertical AI, right? So you'll have solution like we are building for AI for customer service and support. Somebody else will build it for sales. Somebody else will build it for some other industry, for legal. And within that, again, they can verticalize it, saying that I want to be in high-tech companies versus banking versus pharma, right? So the more these verticalized solutions, definitely the problem can be solvable. So what happens in this, again, within that, the way in which we saw it is, there's a standard data sets. Let's say take IT, like information technology, IT industry. In the IT industry, the data sets that you provide, so I come to you, Ben, and I look at your historical cases and support. I go to Carissa and look at her historical tickets and knowledge base. I can train like a baby gets trained. So I bring my algorithm like a brand new baby. I train on your data set. So I'm able to respond to the questions like a good solution is, and I'm not corrupted. I'm only looking at the data that you provided. That's one way to do it. The other approach is, hey, train across all the data before I come to Ben, so that I already have a tribal knowledge. It's like a kid, you give him a math book, go read all the math, and he comes to you, take an exam with you, right? Yeah. So when there's a commonality on the data, I think that's where the industry is going. Particularly IT, your question would be the same between you and Carissa, to the point I train it. I don't need your data sets anymore in my industry in some cases. Right? I've already trained. I already know the answers. If you ask me a question about Microsoft and Adobe, if I don't know it, that means I have a problem. So I really don't need your data set and train in that case.
I gotcha. So there was this idea that I had heard put forth about AI, and it seems really relevant to what you're talking about, where it's easier to start over from scratch than it is to, I guess, kind of correct problems in AI. Because if, let's say, if a data set is fundamentally flawed, and or not even flawed, let's just say you have an AI that is meant to, let's say, tell you recipes and learn recipes and teach you how to bake a cake, and then you say, okay, this cake baking AI is now going to be a car insurance sales AI. You don't start with the cake baking AI and teach it car sales. You just start over from scratch, because obviously it's not the same field whatsoever, and it can only hurt the end result. Is that still an issue where, feeding in not just bad information, but just generally useless information can still affect AI going forward?
Not necessarily. I think, look, again, it depends. Look, anytime you give a wrong data to train, the wrong information can happen, right? So that's obviously true from a general perspective. But what you're saying is, look, if you give me sales information and then you give me some finance information, algorithms today are the point, they don't get confused. Obviously, they understand the question that you're asking. I need to decipher if you're asking a finance question. So they're broad enough to understand the contextually. They understand the context, they understand the intent, they understand the request that you're doing it. They also, we call it, the technical term is called phrases or utterances. Not only I understand your question, you might ask the same question in 100 different ways. So I should be able to handle various synonyms and variations. So I think that area, there you don't need to really define that. Now, your bigger point is, if I give you wrong data and you train on it, obviously I'm going to be wrong. The algorithms will be wrong. It's like telling your kid, do certain things, and if you train him, obviously he's going to be wrong. So I don't think it's a problem of the algorithm in AI. It's all about the values in the data. Actually, I call that's why data is a new oil. I really mean that. So I actually tell the customers, don't throw away your data. And actually, what you should do is you should have a separate thing on topic called Bill of Rights of data. Nobody really thought about that. It's like we have Bill of Rights when we get into the airplane. The data should belong to the customers, consumers. It not belong to even me. I come to you, Ben, and train on your data. If I give you value back, I should give you something back to it. See, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm taking the value out of your data to give you something to reduce your cost. This data belongs to you. And if I try to amortize that, I should be able to give the money back to you. It's a fascinating thing to think about that way. Today, we are not doing that. Like Google takes the data from the consumers, but they're making money. They're not getting a check back to the consumers on what that is. So I think that whole thing will change as a business model and should change in the consumer industry. And in businesses, for sure. Like even large businesses have taken advantage of people's corporate data. So that data should give the money back to you if I train on your data.
You have obviously been in this field for long enough that, one second, and yeah, you've obviously been in the field long enough that you know that just, I think it was like 2 years ago now, time flies by, when it was not GDPR or whatever the data protection guidelines that were put forth by the European Union, and then of course anyone who wants to do business has to follow it. That, everyone, is why you've received a million emails saying, here's what we do with your data, and you have to hit accept cookies on every single site. That is why you do that. That seemed to put forth the notion that you just did, that even though, up until this point, let's say Facebook harvested all of your data, Facebook would then own that data because they generated it and they own it. GDPR said instead, this data is about Ben, even though you created it and, kind of scraped it, it's still Ben's data and Ben should have the right to it. So you're saying that is that fundamental change. And, we were just talking about Facebook with the self-learning AI and things like that. So, and I mean, the AI is still going to keep the data, but you think that, like, with that line of thought, if my data is in their algorithm and in their self-learning AI and that kind of thing, do you feel that AI in the future should have some kind of inherent, this is in everyone's interest and everyone needs to have a stake in this or take a part in this or have a say in how these things are trained? Because, shifting how the data is, or who's responsible for the data and who has the right to the data, wouldn't that have, kind of implications for whatever you train using that data?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a couple of analogies here, 2 examples. So one is, that's why the way in which AiSERA chose the approach is, look, I come to a corporation called Acme Corporation. It's owned by Ben. So I'm going to say, look, Ben, let me look at your data. It's like a fresh kid which is born. I'm going to analyze your data. on your tickets and your knowledge. And if I can reduce your number of requests going to humans and save you the money, you got value after your data. I'm not taking your data, it's still your data. It's like I look at you, I'm trained on your algorithms, I'll create my own metastructure, but data still belongs to you. It's not, you know what I'm saying? I'm taking your data, analyze your data, give the value to you. That's one model that should have. In the consumer industry, also same thing should happen. If the consumer clicks and ads and those things, if people are using it to make money on it, I actually say, look, the model is like the same thing, App Store model. Give 25-30% of the revenue. If somebody made money of your data ban, you owe 25-30%. It's like being App Store. That's what I mean by consumer bill of rights. You and Carissa should really drive that. Look, in the consumer side, that's easy to happen because they know what data they trained on. So if they train billion users data and there's a commonality, and if made a billion revenue, maybe 1/3 of that should be given to all the billion users. You divide it across them. I mean, there are various models you have to figure it out, or maybe you write a check to some various communities and cities. You have to figure it out. Look, where there's a will, there's a way. If you want to do it.
So, and I'm going to kind of jump in here real quick, but I will say that we have heard this idea put forth before. We've had futurists on the show, and you are. You're talking big thoughts, but I really don't take you for a futurist, because a futurist, no offense to any futurists out there, but they talk about things that aren't really happening. But their idea was that, this falls into like a universal basic income. The fact that, we're traditionally used to people generating value through work, work labor, they work for a company and, they get a wage. And the alternative to that is that by generating data that is training these AI and contributing to society that way, simply by letting themselves be, I guess, kind of analyzed for everyone else's benefit, that is deserving of some form of repayment.
Actually, mine is a little different than that. So look, where I'm looking for profit, right? So if you have to make your app in an app store in Apple or Amazon or Google Android App Store, what happens? You get there's an app store fees, right? If somebody uses you get 30%. Similarly, right? You get same thing. Let's say you have an e-commerce site and there's a traffic comes in, you monetize it through YouTube or through Google. Assuming the same philosophy, if some company is using your data and they're monetizing that, you owe a piece of that revenue. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Really simple as that. Yeah. That is in the consumer side. In enterprise, it's well defined. In case of AiSERA, that's where I'm saying is corporates should keep the data, even though the data is stored in, like you take it Salesforce, ServiceNow, DMC, right? You pick any company out there, right? Atlassian, Microsoft, AWS. We go to those companies, look at their data, analyze your data to save you the money back, right? There's no reason why it's like I'm being a good citizen to you. I'm trying to say, look, I'll take your data. I even call it, I take your data exhaust. I'm actually feeding off of a wrong terminology is like I'm feeding off of your data exhaust being like your garbage. If I make money out of your garbage, if you still don't want me, I mean, I don't say a reason why you don't want, right? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's you're talking about the exhaust, the garbage. Essentially, you are looking for answers anyways. You are using these services anyways, and you are simply using kind of the breadcrumb, the trail that people leave behind to further improve that for the future. Makes perfect sense. I'm completely with you. So let's talk about some of the challenges kind of going forward. Collecting the data, that's one thing, and of course there is a very lucrative new job title. If anyone out there would like to get some job security, a data scientist, they are in super high demand to, like you said, kind of the exhaust that people are putting out, being able to collect that and put it into a usable form and, kind of curate that. Very, very important. Other than curated data to power these things, what are some of the other challenges facing self-learning AI?
Yeah, no, I think I actually have a different philosophy on that, right? So I don't know if you have seen it. I call it the 5 no's. See, first is this misnomer that I'm going to take your data exhaust if you have it. But what if you don't have the data? That's why I said, when you come in, you can take my pre-trained algorithms, which are already trained on the data. So it's having your data is a nice to have. It's not a must. Second is when you talk about data science, not every company should hire data scientists, right? See, if you're buying my solution, you're getting my solution as a turnkey. That means I've already built. To use my solution, you don't need data scientists, Ben. You are Carissa, right? Third is to train this thing. It's not like you have to sit them and train them like you're training a baby or an algorithm that you talked about, a human being. You don't need to do any training required. These are all self-trained, continuous training. They'll learn on the go. Fourth is, do you need to do data prep work that you're talking about, right? I don't think you need to do prep work. That's old days, where you take the data, applying ETL, what is called extraction, transformation language. I prep the data, cleanse the data. That's a misnomer. I think that is 10 years back, 5 years back. A good solution today, they'll come in, they will extract the value out of your data. They know what to read from your data, what attributes, what functionality, what aspects. Other data, if they're not using it, they're not ready for those aspects. But it's not like you have to do a lot of prep work. You need to have data scientists to clean the data and then bring in AiSERA or us. That's not the way to see. That was
Uh, yeah, and the only reason I said that was I've seen some, I guess, I don't want to say that they're lesser AIs because they're from large companies that everyone knows. I think that Twitter had one where they tried to use like a chat bot on Twitter that would analyze people's tweets and things like that. And then because the users found out what it was and how it works, they immediately started to input it with racist, homophobic, xenophobic kind of stuff. And I'm sure that you've heard about this because it was ridiculed. And essentially they just had to pull the plug and say, all right, we're done with this. I say curate the data because I know that when it collects it randomly, there is a chance that it kind of turns the whole thing bad.
No, absolutely. I think that I completely agree with you. So where I was saying is to get started this now. After that, to make sure that certain things, whether it's profanity or inappropriate things that you want to say, you obviously have to put what I call the exception, the policies, right? What it should say, what it should not, and what should you not like. It's almost like the Fifth Amendment, right? You take the fifth, you create your common AI solution with the fifth. Hey, if somebody asks you a question, just say, I'm not ready to answer that, or I don't want to answer that question, right? So you can design it. So I would rather we design solution like that. And there are ways to do it. So in that case, you're absolutely right. Look, whatever areas there you want to train, obviously you need to put out the right data sets to train.
I gotcha. So, and I believe you gave us 4 no's. Did you have a 5th one?
Yeah, the fifth one is no professional service required. See, the reason the people thought about all these conversational AI or chat solutions or the NLPs in the enterprise, in B2B or B2C market, people come and say deploy with hundreds of man hours. Right? These are all cloud services today. Cloud is a hot thing. Not only just SaaS. It's not like I need 9 months to deploy solution. Right? That's why in the enterprise world, by the time you purchase your product, by the time you use it, it's 6 to 9 months. Whereas Amazon or anywhere you buy it, you use it tomorrow. So this whole concept of I need a lot of manual deployment, I think that whole life is changing a lot in the enterprise, right? And there are large vendors doing that. So that's what the 5 no's I talk about.
I gotcha. Yeah, that and those all make a lot of sense, and you've really broke that down really nicely. And yeah, I that is, I think, one problem that I hear more often than most, and not just with AI, but for business, but just in technology with people, is that it seems like people have to learn how to speak to technology. I have a smart speaker sitting right here, so I'm not going to use her name, but it's from Amazon, and it's like I had to kind of learn how to speak to it. AI really needs to come to the point where it knows how to speak to humans instead of making humans learn how to speak to technology. That's super important.
That's right. And also, I think what happens is the people will evolve. Look, this is I would say what we are in the second generation solutions. Actually, even for chatbots, I call it like you are in a conversational AI 2.0 solutions. The first generation chatbots were like rule based. They are very much of a supervised learning. The new word is called unsupervised. It's like you still supervise your kid. So you have two, again, and the analogy is the supervised solutions and rule based is you're like a tiger dad or a mom. You're going to train your kid so structurally, you won't let that kid breathe anything. That's one way. Or other thing is give him unsupervised, give him a book, let him be innovative, let him learn. Then you can come back and augment, like when you're saying it. You still have to still train him on the corner cases or edge cases, right? So I'm a big fan of the third class of solutions, which is called unsupervised AI or unsupervised natural language processing solutions. So that's leading to the 2.0, 3.0 solutions in this market. And remember, this will be under 5-10 years in this industry. So we are getting started. People are putting their toe, and there's real benefit. The other statistic I can give you is I was talking to Gartner analysts on this. I would thought that, let's say, guess how many chatbot projects have failed in 2019 and 20? People who try to build it themselves. 90%. So many people will come and say, I want to build my own AI solution or chatbot. Like you don't wake up and say, I want to build my own Tesla. I mean, chances are that 90% you're going to fail too, right? Same thing. People, it's easy. People fascinate. It's like not like a high school project, right? So most large companies, they hire their data scientists try to build it. 90% of them fail. There's a statistic on that. Now, given that they failed, did they abandon it? To your point, you gave an example of where Twitter has done it, but if you actually go look at it, almost 90 to 95% of those people who actually abandoned it, whose projects have failed, they didn't abandon it. They still invested it in last 18 months. That tells you because there's enough benefit that you talked about. There's so much value and benefit. And the executives from the top with the CEOs and CFOs, they're seeing both the growth. The benefit is, look, is it helping me create a new revenue model? Is it grow my business better? Is it cutting my costs, right? Or is it helping me get my consumers and my users better satisfaction? If there's a benefit, they're still doubling down. So in 90% of this project, even though it failed, 90% still want to continue. That's a fascinating statistic I heard.
That is really incredible. That's it really almost explains itself why so many companies are looking at this in really particular industries where it's one of those things. Much I imagine like the dawning of cars and the idea of the production line. As soon as Ford made the production line, every other car company had to adapt and kind of adopt the same technology. Otherwise, they're just left in the dust. You can't hand make cars while someone else is making 100,000 of them a year. What industries do you feel this is going to affect the most, that AI has to be implemented to stay competitive? Because we've mentioned some things like financial, IT, customer interaction. What industries do you think benefit most from this in the next couple of years?
And look, I'm in the enterprise and consumer side. I'm looking at both B2B and B2C. So the industry that I'm seeing that increasingly adopting is, look, obviously starting from financial fintech companies, right? Even in the fintech companies, like Millennium Banks companies, right? People are going after that. That's in one area. Healthcare right now with all the COVID, right? Healthcare, pharmaceutical and hospitals. If you have any extra dollar, you're going to put the research on your doctors and medicine. This is where, like, we actually had a program where we wanted to help anybody, frontline supporters, this thing where we created a COVID application to help them, right? So this is our way of giving back to the community. So I think healthcare and pharmaceutical, I see a lot of interest. Manufacturing companies, right? Some of these questions are so repetitive. I see a lot in the manufacturing companies. Then other one comes is high tech and IT, right? It's no brainer there. You're already in the high tech company, right? You are deploying high tech solutions. So there's no reason for your product. You need to go have a human being do it. And to me, it's not only a benefit and industry blend. For me, it's much more of if you do this thing, we are actually going to help them, humanity and mankind, or like your human solution. Two reasons. If you look at how many people are in call center jobs worldwide, pick a number. There are statistics like there are 10 million jobs worldwide or 40 million jobs worldwide in call centers. And on the average, they get, whichever country they're in, from India, China, Costa Rica, Philippines, $5 to $10 an hour for this, right? When you say that my password reset doesn't work, or I lost my Adobe Access, or I want Office 365 document is not working, or my Google Sheet is not, how much you want to talk to those person? Those people also want to move up in life, right? We are talking about people, lives matter. We are trying to do these things in life here, right? So how do we make change as humanity to everybody? Way we can do this to drive to improve the lives of those people, and those people want to become, look, they want to become in all walks of life, right? They also become data scientists, they want to become software programmers, they want to become, right, managers, salespeople. So I think the migration path will be provided if you do this thing correctly, and that can be a huge impact.
It's talking about a very interesting humanity growth opportunity, because you're talking about, instead of having 10 to 40 million people doing these customer service jobs, and really, hey, at the end of the day, maybe 90% of them can be solved by saying, did you turn it off and turn it back on again? Something so simple, but a chatbot will certainly be able to do that. And then even if we use AI to, just to give people hope, and it's not all dystopian, let's say we make an AI that can, let's say, do a teacher's job. And I'm not saying that all the teachers lose their job. I'm saying that suddenly an artificial intelligence can teach people how to become data scientists, can teach them math, can teach them these higher orders. And hey, everyone has a teacher right there at their fingertips with their phone. Like there's a lot of growth here. It's not all doom and gloom. AI has the power to really change a lot of people's lives, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you said it better than me. So, look, absolutely. Look, and give it a try. Now, if you actually talk to these agents, I've done a lot of these call centers, people and service agents, I talk to them. They also want to move up. It's not like there's a misnomer that by doing this, those people are losing their jobs. They want to move up in career. They want a migration path. They want to get out of poverty. So if you can do this and they can do a more intellectual job, all the power to them. So this idea of that all these companies which are making billions of dollars, they want this call center and take these calls manually. They have an obligation.
Right. Yeah.
Those people in companies can move up and they can take their sales job, marketing job, engineering jobs, right? That's not happening. So we has actually a moral obligation. I mean, actually, if I were to outpose that question to all your talk show guests here and say, hey, make their lives better, right?
Right. Yeah. And sorry, having a little bit of an issue with the internet. It looks like everything should be still going, but hey, we're still recording and it should be okay. But yeah, I will certainly do that and we really do with guests in kind of the future I'm sorry, guests in the past. We always ask them, kind of how is your technology how does it change people's lives? And that's certainly something that we really focus on. And looking like, okay, we might have lost our guest. Hopefully all this comes back here in just a moment. Let me see. So yeah, we should be okay. But Muddu, I'm assuming that you can hear me. And I think with that being said before,
I can hear you.
Perfect. Yeah. And it looks like we're having some issues here, but luckily I will say that I think our part of the interview here and what we've been talking about, Muddu, I will let you have the last thing to say, but is there anything that we didn't touch on, anything that we didn't talk about that you feel we should before we say goodbye?
No, I think you asked very good questions. And look, first of all, thank you for having me. We are in a strange COVID times, right? The key is everybody to stay safe, and we want to recover through this whole process, get a vaccine, and safety and health is more important. And anything we all can do to and this automation through customer service support. I mean, we would love to help everybody in any organization or any consumer or user for that matter. So thank you for having me. I appreciate you talking to me.
Our pleasure. And once again, we have been talking to AiSERA, AiSERA.com. If you want to find out more information, or hey, you can head on over to computeramerica.com and you can find it right there. We'll have a link to it. And of course, we've been talking to the CEO of the company, Muddu. And Muddu, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I know that we're having a few issues, but hey, we're going to work it out on our end. Thank you so much. We'll get back in touch in a couple months, see how everything's going.
It's been speaking with you and Carissa. Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure. And
Thanks
have a good one.
Hanging out.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Carissa. Stay safe.
And now we're going to thank you so much. And we're going to we are going to be very rude and kick you out, but thank you so much and have a good one. Bye-bye. All right, and there you go. So we're going to do that, and now we get to play our own little game of tech support. Carissa, can you hear me? Well, Carissa, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, and everyone else just heard I can, and then it cut out. So this is.
I lost you again.
Yep. It's cutting in and out, so we're going to do our best, and yeah, hopefully this works out. So, unfortunately, and I at this point, I'm happy because it's not completely out, but I'm very upset that it's kind of out, and that is almost as frustrating. But luckily, we got through our interview, so that's the important part. We love it when our guests are able to really, kind of talk about what it is that they're passionate about. And, kind of do what they do. And hey, at least we record things here locally, so everything should be okay. Carissa, before we move on, and hopefully this all works, Carissa, what did you think of that guest?
I thought he was really great. I thought he had a lot of good things to say, and I thought it was really interesting. And it's super important that we, start implementing more AI and stuff like that. I actually had an instance semi-recently with an AI machine through Google. I was trying to schedule a reservation at a restaurant, and I was like, oh, I don't want to call. And then I look at my phone and it says, have Google call for you. And I was like, what is that? So I did it, and I didn't get the reservation. They didn't have any space, but we got there, showed up, got a table, and they were like, yeah, this weird robot called, and they were like, hey, we're looking for a table for blah, blah, blah. And they didn't even know what to do with it because they'd never even seen that before. So that was really interesting.
I believe you're talking, and Google showed that off about a year and a half ago, I think, where the Google Assistant will actually call restaurants, like you were just saying, and make reservations. And it actually uses, like an actual human voice. And it tries to handle the whole thing by itself. Unfortunate that they weren't able to do that. But yeah, that is one instance where, artificial intelligence is going to try to save you and everyone you know time and energy and effort. And that is, people wonder where, how society is going to improve the lives of everyone and how technology is going to do that. That is a prime example, because that's just one little thing where, Carissa, I'm not saying that you need to work every minute of your life, but that's 5 minutes that you don't have to distract yourself. You don't have to take out of your day to do something as mundane as that. And then, of course, for the restaurant, they have an AI, and eventually they're going to have AIs as well that will answer those calls and deal with them themselves. So that's where society is going to pull itself up and enrich the lives of everyone, is because, hey, we're going to free ourselves up. We're going to let ourselves do other things.
Right. So it's just really interesting to see how it all progresses and stuff like that. I really enjoyed that interview. It was good.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely want to thank, obviously, AiSERA for coming on the show. So, Carissa, in the last part of the show, we're going to do computer and technology news, assuming the internet works. And I better open up a bunch of these stories just so I have them. Carissa, I just want to let you know, worst case scenario, if things go super south and I lose internet connection altogether, then I will record it, finish it by myself, and put it up for the podcast for everyone to listen. But yeah, we're going to save this. It's going to be okay, everyone. And Carissa, if nothing else, are you ready for computer and technology news?
I'm so ready.
All right, let's go ahead and do it. Ladies and gentlemen, computer and technology news brought to you by Computer America.
That's my favorite part.
You need a bumper, otherwise people won't know what you're doing here on a radio show. So there you go. Right. Oh, and actually, and this is kind of related, but if anyone out there would like some light reading to hear about what I was talking about with the artificial intelligence being racist and things like that, there's a Wikipedia entry. We'll include it in the show notes. Tay was the bot. It was put out by Microsoft, and yeah, unfortunately, it didn't take long for people to realize what hashtags were kind of activating this chatbot, and it almost instantly had, let's see, it had people red pill, or it had this AI red pilling people. It had them being again homophobic. It had them spouting kind of neo-Nazi messaging and things like that. And let's just say Microsoft did not appreciate that one bit. But if you'd like to learn more about that, check out this Wikipedia entry about Tay, the chatbot, Tay. Okay, so that's a little related, unrelated. Carissa, you sent over a couple stories, and I think we're going to start with this one, and this is from Popular Mechanic. Great publication, great magazine. There you go. That's the word. Those old things, those magazines. But this is by Ms. Courtney Linder, and they're saying that obviously this is a GIF of, if you're watching the video portion, this is a GIF of the artificial hand from Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars, and when Luke Skywalker got his artificial hand, it's talking about the prosthetic skin and the electronic skin that covers the prosthetic hand, because obviously when it was all said and done, the robotic hand looked like a fully functional hand. So Luke Skywalker's prosthetic arm inspired this electronic skin. Art imitating, well, life imitating art. Happens all the time, more than you think. Now, well, here we go. Luke's cybernetic replacement limb was pretty awesome, but not exactly replicable, there we go, in the medical world at the time or even now, but a team of researchers at the National University of Singapore are hoping to change that with a new kind of artificial nervous system. And think of it as electronic skin. They're saying that this is the asynchronous coded electronic skin, or ACEs, uses a network of sensors connected through a single conductor. And this is in contrast to existing electronic skins, which is interlinked wire networks that are prone to failure if a single point is damaged. I believe this would be something akin to, let's say, Christmas lights. If you have them all in a series and one of the series burns out, gets damaged, gets cut, then the entire link of Christmas lights is useless until you find that one light bulb. This would be something where you have each one an individual bulb all feeding into a network, almost like a web. And, it doesn't really matter if one link in the web gets broken, then, hey, the web still works. Now, it sounds crazy, but the electronic skin is actually so efficient that it can detect touches 1,000 times faster than the human nervous system in just 16. Wow. That's crazy. And really, I can imagine that the difference there is that the limiting factor is not your body and the reaction speed and all that kind of thing, but the limitation is the speed of light. Obviously, it takes time for the electrons to travel through the system. So 1,000 times faster in just 16 nanoseconds, the ACES system can differentiate between 20 to 30 different textures, representing the fastest achievement yet for artificial skin. Carissa, I know that this is super important for people who have these limbs or who will have these limbs, knowing the difference between a hot surface and a cold surface. Obviously this wouldn't affect a robotic hand as much as a human one, but being able to touch something and see if it's warm, if it's hot, if it's cold, if it's soft, if it's hard, something that we all take for granted, but for a robot to do it, that is, hey, that's what you want in a hand. You want a hand to do everything a human hand can do, and this is right. A big step towards that. So everyone, they're talking about scalability is a critical consideration, as big pieces of high-performing electronic skin are required to cover the relatively large surface areas of robots. And he said that he recently confirmed that his team was partly inspired by Star Wars. So in the lab, it works, and now the hard part, scaling it up and being able to sell it to people, because that's important. If it's not if they can't sell it to people, then, hey, that's about the end of it. Capitalism, it's fun. Now, well, it is. So looking through some of the articles here, and I know that you sent over a couple of those, but I wanted to check out some of these, and this one is actually pretty funny, where Apple, they are known for their walled garden. Apple's known for their ecosystem being very safe. It's very protected. They don't allow anything to be run that isn't supposed to be run, as opposed to, again, Android. I don't mean to keep picking on Android for this. Being able to develop for Android is much, much easier than it is for Apple. But if you're an Apple end user, then, hey, a lot of the riffraff kind of gets weeded out before you do. Now, check out this article. It's a bit long, but we're going to skim it a little bit. Apple is not foolproof. They said that Apple accidentally approved malware to run on macOS.
Bunch of noobs.
Noobs indeed. This is not good, especially because, hey, Mac is Well, I'm sorry, what?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, no, Mac is kind of known for being safer when it comes to malware and things like that. So anyways, for decades, Mac users had to worry less about malware than their Windows using counterparts. I will say, though, not to give Apple kudos, Windows got more malware because there were about 20 times as many Windows users as there were Mac users. So if you're looking to build a net to catch fish, are you going to throw it into the tiny little pond or the massive ocean over here? That's why there was less malware. It's not that Mac was inherently safer, it's just that they weren't the primary target. But hey, that's what made the few attempts to actually implement malware on Mac so effective, is because, hey, they just weren't really prepared for it. And this seems to be one of those. In February, check this out. In February, Apple began notarizing all macOS applications, a vetting process designed to weed out illegitimate or malicious apps. And again, that was just in February. Like, this hasn't been around for a long time. Even software distributed outside of the Mac App Store now needs to be notarized, or users wouldn't be able to run them without a special workaround. 7 months later, though, researchers had found an active adware campaign attacking Mac users with the same old payloads, and the malware had been fully notarized by Apple. Womp womp. That's not good. So the campaign is distributed the ubiquitous Schlayer. And and I'm not slurring my words. It's SHLAYER, Layer adware, which by some counts has affected more than 10. Has infected as many as 1 in 10 Mac OS devices in recent years. Very, very prolific. The malware exhibits standard adware behavior, like injecting ads into search results. It's not clear how Schlayer slipped past Apple's automated scans and checks to get notarized, especially that it's virtually identical to past versions. But it's the first known example of malware being notarized for macOS. Carissa, I don't know how much. Interaction you've had with, let's say, YouTube or really any Google product whatsoever. But I'm sure that you know that when it comes to massive services, like trying to authorize every individual program for an operating system, Carissa, how much automation do you think there is for the likes of Apple, Google, Facebook, whatever? Yeah, how much automation do you think there is?
Probably a lot of it, because all of these companies are in fact investing in things like that, where it's the AI that goes through all of that. The government uses it too, so why wouldn't these other companies that also have a ton of things to, keep track of, also have a lot of automation going on? So I think a lot of them just, they're probably not paying attention or just slips right past.
Yeah, there are supposed to be red flags and kind of fail safes for this, but let's face it, automation
you can code
is
over that.
I'm sorry.
You can mask that stuff. I feel like if you're good enough, there's probably ways to get around that, so that way the people that are, or the machines that are reviewing it, don't notice it.
But again, to the article's credit, they said this is almost identical. They didn't change values. They didn't try to hide it. They said this is almost identical to the same malware that had been infecting things for years.
Well, it sounds like sucks to suck. You should get better at doing your thing.
I couldn't have said it better. Now, with that being said, a college student discovered the notarized version of Schlayer while navigating to the homepage of a popular open source Mac development tool. And he said that the research student accidentally typed something slightly different than the correct URL. The page he landed on redirected a number of times to a fake Adobe Flash update page. For those of you who don't know, Adobe Flash, completely debunked, fully stopped supported, deleted off your system. Adobe Flash is awful. Now, with that, he said, curious about what malware he might find, he downloaded it on purpose. What a brave soul. To his surprise, macOS popped up the standard warning about programs downloaded from the internet, but didn't block him from running the program. When he confirmed that it was notarized, he sent the information onto longtime macOS security researcher Patrick Wardle. And he said that I had been expecting that if someone was going to abuse the notarization system, it would be something sophisticated or complex, much to what Carissa just said. What if someone was smart enough to outsmart the system? But he said, in a way, I'm not surprised that it was adware that did it first. Adware developers are very innovative and constantly evolving because they stand to lose a ton of money if they can't get around the new defenses, and notarization is a death knell for a lot of these standard ad campaigns. Well, and they'll block it now. So he notified it, looked through the app or developer ID just a few hours after the company began working on revoking the original certificates, and they notified Apple about these new versions. So they're adapting even as they're trying to take them down. As always, they're adapting as they go. So I think with that being said, going to skip down because we're almost out of time. The show flew on by. But to wrap up this topic, they said that Reed also notes, it's been quite certain that malicious apps would slip through the notarization process, so this doesn't surprise me. I'd actually been considering writing an app that would exhibit classic malicious behaviors and try to get it notarized. Unfortunately, this saves me the trouble. This is the proof I've been waiting for that notarization is not effective. Although I will say, just because something isn't 100% effective does not make it not effective. So,
Right.
Hey, 99% is pretty darn good when instead of just 0%. So with that being said, malware scanners have still detected the Schleyer installations as malware, but anyone not running antivirus would be out of luck because then obviously Apple themselves would not flag it. You need anti-malware. Carissa, music in the background means that we're done. I think that was a fun show.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Absolutely. Looking forward to tomorrow's show as well. Tomorrow on the show, we should have computer and technology news for the full hour. It'll be fun. It'll be relaxing. And hey, we have a lot of great guests coming up. Everyone, we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.